The glass doors of the Denver Tower slid open with a hush, and Grace Harper stepped out into the late afternoon sun. The city glowed in bronze, traffic rumbling like distant thunder. Her fingers trembled around the contract folder clutched to her chest. $10 million. Her algorithm, her sleepless nights, her code, her gamble that machines could diagnose disease faster than any human, had finally been recognized. She pressed her back against the marble pillar, laughing breathlessly, then dialed her father. No answer. Her mother, straight to voicemail. She considered calling her sister, then shook her head. Not her, not yet. She wanted to see their faces when she walked through that front door. Grace drove home with the radio low, her reflection in the windshield smiling wider than she could remember in years. She imagined her mother's eyes softening with pride, her father clapping her shoulder for once instead of brushing her aside. Maybe even her sister would hug her, admit she'd underestimated her. The suburban house came into view. Neat hedges, lights glowing in the kitchen. Grace stepped inside, her heels clicking against the tiles. Her sister was waiting. Catherine sat at the table in her tailored blazer, hair pinned back, scrolling through her phone. She didn't look up until Grace whispered, "I did it." Grace held out the contract like an offering. $10 million. My algorithm. They signed. Catherine's eyes flicked to the paper. Her lips curved, not into a smile, but something brittle, dangerous. "Your algorithm," she repeated, her voice sharp enough to slice. "You mean the one I've been overseeing? The one I presented in meetings while you hid in your cave of code?" Grace's chest tightened. "You know that's not true. You know it's mine." Catherine rose slowly, chair legs scraping against tile. She was taller, her presence filling the room, her perfume sharp and suffocating. "You think you're better than me," she hissed, stepping closer. Grace took a step back. "Catherine, this isn't about you." "It's always been about me," Catherine snapped, her voice cracking into rage. "You think they'll finally love you now? You think this contract makes you worth something?" Grace's throat constricted. The folder slipped from her hands, papers fanning across the floor. They were on the staircase landing now, Catherine's breath hot against her cheek, her hands twitching like claws. "You're nothing without me." The shove came fast, a blur of movement. Grace's body lurched backward, her heel missed the step, gravity yanked her down. Wooden edges slammed into her spine, her skull, her legs. The world spun in a kaleidoscope of agony. Her scream died in her throat. Then, blackness. Beeping. The world returned in fragments, a ceiling of sterile white, the sting of antiseptic, the ache in every limb so sharp she could barely breathe. Grace blinked. A nurse leaned over her, voice soft but edged with disbelief. "You're awake." Grace's lips cracked as she whispered, "How long?" "2 weeks," the nurse said gently. "You've been in a coma." 2 weeks. Time stolen. Grace's mind raced to her family. My parents? My sister? The nurse hesitated, then shook her head. "No visits. Not once. Your parents called early on, but they said you brought this on yourself." The words landed heavier than the fall. Grace turned her face away, tears burning her eyes. Her own blood, dismissing her like a burden, a shame. Days blurred together, nurses changed shifts, machines hummed, but no one came. Not Catherine, not her parents. The loneliness was suffocating, pressing against her chest like a second injury. One night, the door creaked open. Catherine's silhouette filled the frame. She stepped closer, arms folded, a smirk tugging her mouth. "Still clinging to life, huh?" Grace's chest tightened. "Why are you here?" "To remind you," Catherine said, leaning close, her perfume like poison, "that you're holding everyone back. Stay out of my way." Then she was gone, heels clicking, leaving only silence and the stench of betrayal. Grace's fists clenched against the sheets. Catherine wasn't just cruel, she was hiding something. A week later, Grace's best friend Cynthia slipped in like a lifeline, eyes swollen from crying. She rushed to the bed, hugging her gently. "I've been fighting to see you," she whispered. "They wouldn't let me until now." Grace's throat ached with gratitude. "What's happening?" Cynthia's lips pressed tight. "Your sister's been talking at work, saying she's taking over the contract, telling everyone you won't be back." Grace's blood ran cold. "She's... what?" "She's saying the algorithm was her vision, that you're done." The room tilted. Grace gripped Cynthia's hand as the betrayal solidified into something darker: theft. That night, Grace pulled her phone from the drawer, her fingers trembling. She opened her banking app. Frozen. Her breath caught. She dialed the bank, her voice barely steady. "I don't understand. Why is my account frozen?" The representative's answer made her stomach lurch. "A court order based on concerns over your ability to manage your finances." Ability? The words sliced through her like a knife. Catherine's smirk, the hospital visit, the whispers at work, it all clicked. This wasn't abandonment. This was war.
Morning seeped into the hospital room as a gray smear. Grace forced herself upright, pain flaring through her leg like a live wire. She stared at the IV pole, at the taped bruises on her knuckles, at the door that never opened for family. She was done waiting. The man who entered wore a charcoal suit and eyes that missed nothing. He set a heavy folder on her tray and pulled up a chair. "I'm Daniel Mercer, attorney. A colleague at your company contacted my firm, quietly. They were worried when you vanished." "Vanished," Grace repeated, tasting the word. "My sister calls it convenient." Daniel slid the folder closer, the tab edges razoring the silence. "There's a court order freezing your assets. It cites your incapacity based on medical records." He flipped to the top page. Her name, her birth date, a signature she hadn't signed. "That's not my handwriting." "I didn't think so." He turned another page. "And these medical entries? Extended sedation, cognitive impairment, prognosis guarded. Except," he tapped, "your chart contradicts it. A doctor on staff flagged inconsistencies." A soft knock. The door opened. A woman stepped in wearing scrubs and resolve. Mid-40s, warm eyes, a jaw set like a hinge. "I'm Dr. Simone Price," she said, closing the door behind her. "I oversaw parts of your care, and I'm going to be very clear. Your records were altered." Grace swallowed. "By who?" "We're investigating access logs, but the edits came through an external legal request that allowed a summary to be added to your file. The summary conveniently exaggerates your condition." Daniel met Grace's gaze. "It's a pattern. Bank freeze, capacity, then transfer authority over your contract." Grace laughed once, harsh, disbelieving. "She's stealing my life by paperwork." "Paper can be a knife, but it cuts both ways." Dr. Price placed a tablet on the tray, pulling up 2 versions of a note. "Here, my original, patient responsive to pain, spontaneous eye opening, anticipated recovery within weeks. The altered addendum, persistent vegetative state likely, long-term care recommended. That addendum isn't mine." Grace's hand drifted to the line where someone had entombed her with words. She saw it now, Catherine's crisp blazer at the kitchen table, the polished corporate smile, a life sculpted in rooms where signatures mattered more than truth. "What do we do?" she asked. First, Daniel said, we gather proof they can't explain away. Logs, timestamps, testimony. Second, we hit fast before they lock you out of more. Grace's heart drummed once, heavy. Then let's start. She signed herself out against medical advice. The discharge nurse frowned at the crutches, at the pallor beneath her freckles. You shouldn't be leaving. I shouldn't have been left. And she pushed through the doors. The cafe smelled like chicory and burned sugar. Catherine sat at a corner table, the posture of a queen on neutral ground. Back straight, blazer smooth, phone placed face down like a loaded gun. Grace tucked the recorder deeper into her coat pocket and limped over. Catherine's eyes swept her up and down. You look alive. Grace sat, forcing a smile. Coffee? I prefer winning. Must taste bitter, Grace murmured. A small tilt to Catherine's mouth. Don't be dramatic. The contract's moving forward. I stepped in when you couldn't. You mean my contract? Words, she said, almost bored. You know I made the rooms listen. Your algorithm would still be a Git repository if I didn't shepherd it. Grace leaned in. Say it clean, Kath. Catherine's lashes lowered, amused. It's mine now. A pulse thrummed at Grace's throat. The recorder warmed in her pocket like a secret burning to be born. She kept her voice cool. You did all this while I was in a coma? Timing is everything, Catherine said, lifting her cup. To new leadership. Grace stood, her crutches biting into her palms. To discovery. She left before the mask could crack. The apartment Daniel found was temporary, furnished in rental gray. Cynthia sprawled on the rug amid printouts, hair tied back, fury glowing off her like a fever. A private investigator Daniel trusted, Marla Crane, all sharp cheekbones and sharper habits, sorted documents into piles with the efficiency of a surgeon. Marla slid a sheet across the coffee table. Bank statements, she said. Transfers from Catherine Harper to one Mark Fielding. Does that name ring? Senior analyst, Grace said. He laughed too hard at Catherine's jokes. $10,000 here, 7 there, Marla said. Memo lines vague. Then, she tapped a folder stamped internal. We scraped metadata from doctored pitch decks inside the company drive. File owner alternates between you and Mark. Edits attributed to Catherine from a login that pinged a VPN outside the office at 2 a.m. Cynthia shoved her phone toward Grace, a chain of emails glaring on screen. With Grace out, I'm stepping in to replace her. The contract's in good hands. Grace's stomach nodded. Another email. Board wants confidence. I'll present as lead scientist. Lead. Scientist. Her breath shortened. She tasted copper. She's rewriting the past while I'm still bleeding. You won't be for long, Marla said. I've also got text messages subpoena ready between Catherine and Mark. The tone is conspiratorial. Daniel arrived with takeout and war. He spread a legal pad. He said, Colorado is one-party consent for recordings. Your cafe audio is admissible. We file an emergency motion to dissolve the freeze, plus a civil suit alleging fraud, conversion, conspiracy. We also notify your corporation's legal team we have evidence of IP misattribution. Grace stared at the constellation of proof. Bank transfers, emails, timestamps. It still felt unreal. Like the old childhood dream where you run through a house that keeps adding doors, none of which lead outside. What about the hospital records? She asked. Dr. Price is preparing a sworn statement, Daniel said. We'll seek the access logs tomorrow. If the legal summary came from a firm tied to your sister, we'll trace it. Cynthia squeezed Grace's knee. I kept knocking on your door at the hospital, she said softly. I thought if I knocked hard enough, the universe would answer. Grace covered Cynthia's hand. It just did. The hospital's admin office was a windowless box with a wall clock that clicked too loudly. An administrator named Hargreaves sat behind a desk that looked permanently disappointed. Daniel slid a request across. We need access logs on Miss Harper's chart. Who viewed, who edited, and any external legal requests that appended summaries. Hargreaves peered over his glasses. There are privacy protocols. Dr. Price stepped in behind Daniel. "I authorized it," she said. "Given the suspected alteration, it's patient safety." Hargreaves made a show of sighing, then typed. The printer chattered. Paper slid out, warm as a pulse. Daniel scanned. "Here," he murmured. 2 days after admission. External legal upload from Benton and Smythe LLP, summary filed by paralegal, same day internal note altered by user ID J. Larson, who shouldn't have that permission. Benton and Smythe, Grace repeated. Catherine bragged once about retainer counsel. I thought she liked the way the partners poured champagne. Dr. Price leaned over the logs. And the internal user? I'll open an inquiry. If staff credentials were borrowed or coerced, we'll find it. Hargreaves cleared his throat. This is serious. It's criminal, Daniel said. Grace stared at her name on the log, the times like tiny tombstones. She'd been tucked into bed while strangers rearranged her future with keystrokes. Print it all, she said. That night, thunder crawled over Denver. Grace sat at the window, the city stitched with lightning, the courthouse dome a ghost on the horizon. Memories rose uninvited. Catherine at 6, wetting a brush and fixing Grace's watercolor until it looked more like Catherine's. Catherine at 10, telling their parents Grace didn't share. Catherine at 15, breezing through the kitchen with their mother's arm linked through hers, while Grace held up a first-place ribbon that no one saw. She pressed her forehead to the glass. The reflection staring back looked older than 28 and harder. You're not a ghost, she told it. You're here. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Hello? Heavy breathing. A male voice. Low. Rushed. You don't know me. And I didn't call you. Don't call me back. Who is this? A pause. I'm the one who ran the printer. Mark. I only changed what she told me, but it's getting bad. She said if you woke up, we'd make sure you didn't get far. What do you mean by make sure? Check your brakes, he blurted. The line clicked dead. She stared at the phone until the screen dimmed. Then she grabbed her crutches and moved, fast, unsteady, furious. She yanked open her apartment door, heart battering her ribs. The stairwell smelled like damp concrete. She clattered down to the small parking court where her hatchback crouched beneath a flickering lamp. Marla was already there in a hooded jacket, like a shadow peeled off the wool. She tailed Mark after work, she said. Figured we might get lucky. She knelt beside the front wheel with a penlight. Her hand disappeared behind the tire. The light found something metallic, something that didn't belong. Marla's voice flattened. Lines nicked, not cut, scored, enough to fail under pressure on a downhill. The world tilted. Grace felt the same lurch she'd felt at the top of the stairs, air where there should have been ground. Marla stood, eyes cold now, businesslike. You're not driving this car again. Grace gripped the crutch so hard her palm ached. That wasn't paperwork. That was a grave. They rode the elevator back up in silence, thunder rolling like a judgment. In the apartment, Daniel listened, jaw tightening as Marla described the brake line. He said, This escalates us from civil fraud to attempted harm. We file a police report tonight. We seek a protective order, and we push the emergency hearing to unfreeze your accounts tomorrow morning. Grace nodded. The room sharpened into edges. Tomorrow, she said. We stop them tomorrow. Cynthia handed her a pen. Then sign the affidavit. Let's give the truth teeth. Grace signed, ink dragging across paper like a cut healing in real time. Dawn cracked open, clean and cruel. The Denver County Courthouse rose like a stern parent, stone shoulders squared against the sky. Daniel's steps were clipped, Marlon moved like she didn't trust corners, and Cynthia kept swallowing, eyes shiny with rage and love. Dr. Price walked with them in her white coat as if daring the world to argue with medicine. In the marble lobby, Grace felt the echo she would hear again months later, the hollow knock of her crutches on polished floor, every tap an argument that she was still here. A security officer opened the doors to courtroom 5A. Catherine was already inside. She turned in her seat, surprise flaring, then settling into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her blazer was newer, black as threat. Beside her sat a lawyer in a navy suit with a tie that screamed billable hours. And behind them, like a pair of ghosts who hadn't decided whether to haunt or hide, sat Grace's parents. Her mother covered her mouth with her fingers. Her father's face had the color of weathered paper. Grace kept moving. She took her seat at counsel table, Daniel beside her, the file mountain between them and the people who shared her last name. Dr. Price slid into the row behind, a steady presence. Marla leaned against the back wall, arms folded, eyes forward. The clerk announced the case. The judge entered, robe sweeping, gaze cool as a scalpel. Emergency motion to dissolve financial freeze, protective order, and preservation of evidence, Daniel said, rising. He began to speak, and the room changed. Words became architecture. The cafe recording, the bank transfers, the emails, the access logs from the hospital showing the legal summary that had turned compassion into a weapon. The photo of a brake line cleanly scored.
When the recording played, Catherine's voice, bored and bright. "It's mine now." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Catherine didn't turn. She watched the judge. Dr. Price testified, voice precise, unflinching. "The addendum does not reflect my assessment. It functioned to portray Ms. Harper as permanently incapacitated. That was false." Marla testified, clipped and clinical, about the car. "A slow failure. Not an accident. Not likely." Grace watched her parents as the evidence stacked. Her mother blinked quickly. Her father's jaw clenched, then unclenched, as if he were trying to bite through something too tough to swallow. Catherine finally stood. "I acted in the company's best interest," she said, voice smooth. "My sister is brilliant, but unstable. I stepped in." Daniel didn't smile. Stepped into a bank account, a hospital chart, a brake line. Her lawyer objected. Overruled. Grace felt the weight of every night she'd coded until her hands cramped, every time she'd steeled herself against her sister's shadow. She stood on her crutches, pain sparking in her leg, and looked at Catherine across the aisle. "You tried to erase me," she said steady. "You weaponized my injuries. You set a trap in the shape of love." Silence pooled. The judge's pen hovered, then scratched across a form. "Freeze dissolved. Protective order granted. All parties instructed to preserve and produce documents and devices for forensic review. Ms. Harper, you will have full access to your accounts and medical records. Counsel, we will set a preliminary hearing on allegations of fraud and conspiracy." The gavel kissed wood, a sound as small and enormous as a heart beginning again. Catherine's smile finally cracked. Grace breathed in the stale courthouse air and tasted something bright under the dust. War had been declared. Now it would be fought in daylight. The bank manager handed Grace a new debit card like it was a treaty. She signed, the tip of the pen clicking against plastic, and slid it into her wallet. Outside, the sky was the color of raw steel. Denver felt different with money back in her veins, less like a maze, more like a map. Daniel's phone buzzed as they stepped onto the sidewalk. He listened for 5 seconds, face tightening, then hung up. Company counsel responded. "They want to cooperate, but they're demanding your entire codebase for chain of authorship." Grace barked a laugh. "They want my work to bury me with." "We'll give them commit history, not keys to the kingdom," Daniel said. "But first, forensics lab, your laptop, your phone, everything that can prove provenance." "Let them count fingerprints," she said. "Mine are everywhere." The lab smelled like ozone and coffee. Rows of benches glowed with monitors tracking progress bars that crept like glaciers. A technologist named Noor pulled on gloves and opened Grace's laptop as if it were a rib cage. "Your Git logs are clean," Noor said. "Under the company drive shared folders. Someone duplicated a branch of your repo 6 weeks ago, renamed it with Mark's handle, then backdated metadata. Sloppy. Their script missed server-side stamps." She smirked. "People always forget the server tells time too." Grace exhaled, a slow release. "So they tried to erase me and rewrote the clock. Time is stubborn. So is truth." A third screen bloomed with emails. Noor's brows knit. "And this?" Catherine used a private Gmail to coordinate with Benton and Smythe. Not company mail. Payment receipts attached. Retainer memo says, "Objective, secure interim control while subject incapacitated." Noor highlighted a line. Also a draft affidavit, names redacted. Whose names? Grace asked. Noor glanced at Daniel. We'll unmask it. Daniel nodded once, jaw set. Chain it to the motion. Grace stared at the screens, her life unwound in code, in timestamps, in tidy betrayals. She felt a strange tenderness for the rows of numbers. They had never lied to her. Noor pulled off her gloves. One more thing. You had location sharing with 2 contacts the night you fell. Grace felt the floor shift. Who? Noor clicked. 2 circles pulsed over her home address. The name surfaced. Catherine Harper. And her mother. Grace heard the blood in her ears. My mother? Noor zoomed in on a timestamp. Pinged at your house right after your fall. Stayed 33 minutes. Then left. Before the ambulance? Grace whispered. Noor checked. Yes, 17 minutes before. The room tightened. Daniel's voice was low. We'll verify with cell records. Grace's mouth dried. Why would she... The question snapped in half inside her. Noor didn't answer. Machines hummed. They found Mark sitting alone in a fluorescent cafeteria, stirring a coffee he didn't drink. He looked smaller without Catherine's shadow to lengthen him. Daniel slid into the seat opposite. Marla took the chair by the aisle, casual as a trap. You shouldn't be here, Mark muttered, his hand shook. Catherine's lawyer can't save you from perjury, or conspiracy, or tampering with medical records. He flinched. I didn't touch the hospital. You touched the deck, the metadata, the board packet? Marla said flat. We have transfers from Catherine to your account. Mark's gaze darted, landed on Grace, skittered away. She said it was temporary. She said Grace wasn't coming back. Grace is right here, Daniel snapped. Mark squeezed his eyes shut. She said... He stopped. Started again. Softer. She said Grace wasn't safe. Grace leaned forward. Not safe how? Mark stared at his coffee cup as if it might explain him. He whispered, Your mother called me 2 days after. She thanked me for keeping the company stable while the family dealt with you. He swallowed. She said Catherine had always carried you, that it was time to let her lead. Grace felt the sentence like a bruise pressed. My mother called you? Mark nodded miserably. She asked if I'd help with the presentation optics. Said the board needed a familiar face to trust. She made it sound like charity. Daniel's pen paused on paper. Will you sign a statement? Mark's mouth opened, closed. Terror hollowed his eyes. If I do, she'll destroy me. She already did, Marla said, gentle in a way that landed like a fact. Help us end it. Silence cracked. Mark nodded once, a man stepping into rain he deserves. The house on Sycamore Lane looked the same. Porch light golden, wind chimes whispering, that perpetual aura of tidiness that felt like a verdict. Grace stood on the walkway, crutches pressing crescents into the lawn. Night wrapped the neighborhood in a hush that didn't feel peaceful. Her father opened the door. He didn't step aside. Grace, he said cautiously, like saying her name might set the room on fire. She looked past him. Her mother stood in the hall, both hands clenched around a dish towel that didn't need holding. Catherine's framed diploma grinned from the wall. Centered. Lit. I need to know why you didn't come to the hospital, and I need to know why your phone was inside this house after I fell. Her mother's face rearranged, then froze. Who told you that? The truth did, Grace said. Her father exhaled heavily. We got a call from Catherine. She said you were violent, that you pushed her, that you fell trying to hurt her. He swallowed. Your mother, he glanced back as if asking for permission. Your mother panicked. She said if this got out, if the board heard, your sister's promotion. Grace felt her stomach freefall. Promotion?
Her mother found her voice. It was bright and brittle, like china under stress. You don't understand. Catherine has worked
She has smoothed things, fixed your rough edges for years. We thought if we could control the narrative. She flinched at her own words. We were wrong, she said quickly, like a hand thrown up too late to block a blow. We called early the next morning. You came to the scene and left, Grace said, each syllable a stone. You left me alone on a staircase with a broken body and drove home. Her mother's lip trembled. We thought you'd sleep it off? You thought the company mattered more. You thought Catherine mattered more. Her father stared at the floor. He had nothing to offer her but silence. Grace swallowed hard. Did you sign anything? Her mother blinked. Sign what? A letter? An affidavit to a law firm? Her mother's shoulders stiffened. That was answer enough. Grace backed away, the porch step a cliff. You raised 2 daughters. You chose one. Her mother reached out. She couldn't tell if it was for comfort or for optics. She didn't care. She turned, the night air cold and clean, and left them on their tidy threshold. In Daniel's office, the lamps cast warm circles over cold facts. He scribbled on a legal pad, arrows and boxes multiplying like cells under a microscope. We can add aiding and abetting to the civil complaint against your parents. At minimum, they're witnesses to the aftermath. If they signed anything for Benton and Smythe, they're in the chain. Grace sat with her hands around a paper cup she hadn't sipped. They stood in my house and chose a story. They chose Catherine's story over the blood on the stairs. Daniel's voice softened. I know this hurts. It doesn't hurt. It clarifies. The word felt clean, harsh, but clean. Marla slid a manila envelope on the desk. Security footage, from your office garage the night before you fell. Grace glanced up. Why the night before? Marla tapped the envelope. Patterns. People rehearse crimes by practicing boldness. They steal small before they steal everything. Daniel opened the envelope. Stills in grainy grayscale. Catherine's car pulling in, Mark getting out of the passenger side. One frame, Catherine at the trunk, lifting a slim metal case. What is that? Grace asked. Marla's mouth tilted. A mobile scanner, the kind IT uses to duplicate drives without removing them. She didn't just need your name, she needed your work. Grace stared at the picture. Then she already had it before the contract. Marla nodded. Which means, if we can match any lines of your code in her lead scientist deck, she isn't just claiming credit, she's trafficking in stolen IP. Daniel's pen stopped. That's not just civil, that's criminal. Grace felt the heat rise in her spine, not rage this time, but something colder. A boundary inside her clicked into place. File it. Cynthia texted at midnight. Can you talk? The words were panic like perfume. Grace called. A man answered. Who is this? Grace demanded. A beat. Benton and Smythe, the voice said smoothly. Ms. Alvarez is with us. She'll call you back when she's calmer. Grace's breath stuttered. What did you do to her? Nothing at all. We simply explained her exposure. She accessed company emails without authorization and shared them with you. A polite cough. Crime meet conscience. Grace's grip white-knuckled the phone. Put her on the line. Cynthia's voice arrived thready. Grace, I'm okay. They said they can charge me. They said if I cooperate, they'll... Cooperate how? Grace snapped. Identify what I sent and testify that I acted alone. A hitch. They want me to say you pressured me. Grace swallowed fury. Listen to me. You did nothing wrong. Whistleblowing in a fraud case is protected. Daniel will... The line rustled. Then the smooth voice returned. Miss Harper, let's not make this adversarial. You have a brilliant mind. Settle. Assign leadership to Ms. Catherine Harper, accept a generous royalty, and we all walk away intact. Grace laughed. It came out hollow. You think this is about money. The voice didn't change. Everything is about money. Not tonight, Grace said and hung up. Her hand shook. She dialed Daniel, relayed every word. They're trying to peel your allies, he said. Will filed to protect Cynthia as a witness. And we're subpoenaing Benton and Smythe. They're too confident. Confidence leaves fingerprints. Grace stared into the dark. They think I can be bought. Can you? Daniel asked, not because he doubted, but because he was the kind of lawyer who respected an answer more when it had been tested. No, she said, not anymore. The preliminary hearing landed like an ambush. The courtroom was smaller than the last, the bench lower, the judge younger, the kind who watched everything and gave nothing away. Catherine's lawyer moved quickly, asking for dismissal of fraud counts, painting Grace as volatile, hinting at family issues that made her an unreliable narrator. Then Benton and Smythe made their mistake. They introduced the capacity summary into the record to justify their actions, nor had given Daniel the metadata analysis hours earlier. Now he approached the lectern, paper like a blade. Your Honor, the summary they rely on was injected into the medical record from an external IP belonging to Benton and Smythe at 2:17 a.m., 3 days after Miss Harper began responding to stimuli. We have access logs, and we have the original doctor's notes contradicting it. He let it hang. We also have a paralegal draft affidavit signed by 2 individuals who share Miss Harper's last name. A tremor ran through the gallery. Grace didn't turn to look at her parents. She stared at Catherine, who went very still. The judge's gaze sharpened. Counsel? Benton and Smythe's attorney stammered, papers ruffled, then recovered into silk. Clerical error. We were misled by family representations made in good faith. Daniel didn't blink. The break line wasn't. The judge leaned back. No dismissals. Discovery proceeds. I am sealing medical records and instructing parties to cease extrajudicial intimidation of potential witnesses. A pointed look at Catherine's table. And I am referring the capacity summary to the bar for preliminary review. The gavel fell like a door slamming. Grace stood slowly. The room shimmered with heat that wasn't heat. She felt splintered by her mother's phone in her house after the fall, by Cynthia's shaking voice under a lawyer's thumb, by Mark's coffee and confession. Every fracture hurt. Every fracture also let in light. On the courthouse steps, reporters hovered like gulls. Catherine exited on the far side, flanked by counsel, jaw locked. Her mother brushed past without meeting Grace's eyes. Her father hesitated, half-turned, then followed his wife into the camera's flash. Daniel touched Grace's elbow. You okay? Grace watched the 2 figures disappear into the crowd. I'm done hoping they'll be anything but what they are. Marla's phone buzzed. She glanced, then looked up, eyes narrowing. Heads up. Anonymous tip. Catherine's meeting someone tonight at the old rail depot. Could be Mark, could be the paralegal, could be a burner. Grace felt the city hum under her feet, a live wire. Then we meet her there, in daylight or in the dark. She looked at the dome, at the thin slice of moon hung like a witness above it. They wanted this secret. Let's make it loud.
The old Denver rail depot sat in a bowl of shadow, its brick arches blocked out against a silver moon. Freight cars slept on rusted tracks, graffiti glinting when the wind swung a lone floodlight. The place smelled like iron and rain, like secrets that never rotted because they were armored. Marla killed the headlights a block away. One camera here, she said, tapping a pen to her tablet. Another on the trestle, audio triangulated. If anybody so much as exhales a confession, we'll catch it. Daniel checked his watch. Anonymous tip said 11. His tie was gone, sleeves rolled. If this feels wrong, we pivot. Grace tightened the strap of her knee brace. The courthouse victory still lived in her chest, warm and fragile. She looked out at the black lanes of track carving the ground into choices. No pivot. We show up. We end this. They approached under the trestle's ribs. Gravel clicked under Grace's crutches. Every echo sounded like memory. The staircase, the fall, the silence after. Headlights bled into the yard. A black SUV rolled to a stop. The passenger door opened like a decree. Catherine stepped out in a wool coat the color of storm water,
hair glossy, chin high. A second door opened. A man emerged with a briefcase and the expression of someone bored by emergencies. Benton and Smythe's lawyer. Another door. Mark, pale and jittery, tugging his jacket sleeves like he could crawl inside them. Then the driver's door. Grace's stomach dropped before her brain caught up. Her father. He shaded his eyes, scanning the dark until they snagged on her. Relief flashed, and then something harder settled in. Resolve. He looked recruited. Marla's breath touched Grace's ear. You didn't expect him. I expected him to love me more than her one time. I was wrong. Daniel stepped forward into the wedge of light. Evening. Public place. Cameras rolling. Choose your words with care. Why, Daniel, you brought your little crew. Catherine smiled with everything but her eyes. Her gaze slid to Grace, lingered on the crutches, then flicked away, bored. Sister, you clean up nicely for someone who can't manage her own affairs. That narrative is dead, just like the capacity summary you poisoned. Benton and Smythe's lawyer raised a hand. Let's avoid colorful verbiage. We're here to resolve matters. Quietly. He clicked the briefcase. Stacks of bank envelopes lay like peeled bricks. Mark looked like he might faint. Catherine snapped the case shut with a manicured finger. We're not here to bribe anyone, she said, tone sweet enough to trigger alarms. We're here to offer a royalty arrangement. You sign an assignment of leadership in a non-disparagement clause. We wire a generous advance tonight. You stop this circus. Your friend Cynthia stops pretending to be Joan of Arc. And father, she tipped her head, stops getting dragged into something his heart can't handle. Grace stared at her father. You came to threaten me with your cardiologist? He flinched. Grace, please, this has gone far enough. Far enough for who? For the board? For your peace and quiet? You stood in my house while I bled on wood and decided a story. Your sister is the practical one, he said, voice thinning. She keeps the family's name where it belongs. Daniel stepped between them, not blocking, but diffusing. Mr. Harper, did you sign anything for Benton and Smythe? Any statement about your daughter's condition? Her father's jaw worked. He looked at the lawyer. The lawyer looked at the sky. Just something to help them understand, he said at last. We thought Grace would be unavailable. We were told it was procedural. Grace felt heat lap the edges of her vision. You signed me away, and you're here to do it again? The rail yard held its breath. Across the tracks, another pair of headlights blinked once, then died. Marla's tablet vibrated. She glanced down, then up at Grace. We've got a second observer. South fence, small, alone. Grace's phone buzzed. A text from an anonymous number. I'm sorry, I have to do this. C. Her chest constricted. Cynthia? She scanned the dark. A shadow detached itself from the fence line and moved toward them, shoulders hunched, hands invisible in the sleeves of a hoodie. When she stepped into the spill of light, Grace's breath broke. Cynthia's eyes were glassy. Her lower lip had a tremor she tried to crush between her teeth. A thin wire trailed from beneath her hoodie into her pocket. She caught the faintest reflection on the mic head taped at her collarbone. Catherine smiled widened, triumphant. Look at that, the cavalry. Sin, tell me they didn't. I'm on a call with their investigator, Cynthia said, voice flat like a readout. They threatened me with computer fraud, with jail. She swallowed. They said I'd go easier if I said you pressured me to pull emails. Grace stepped forward, crutch biting gravel. And you did? Cynthia's eyes flooded. The tears didn't fall. No, she said, quiet but fierce. I said the truth. I said I did it because the truth needed air. Catherine's eyes sharpened. Careful, she said lightly. Words are contracts. Benton and Smythe's lawyer opened the briefcase again and with practiced indifference, peeled off an envelope and offered it to Mark. For your time. Mark stared at it like it was a snake. He didn't take it. Smart, Marla said, stepping into the light now, hands visible. Those bills are pre-marked. We filed a notice an hour ago. Accepting them is an experiment in handcuffs. The lawyer smiled, flickered, then reset. Allegations, miss. She said, Crane, private investigator, also woman with a camera 2 inches from your good side. Catherine turned to her father with a whisper Grace could hear anyway. They're trying to scare us. We're trying to stop you. Different verbs. Something shifted behind the lawyer's eyes. He closed the case. Very well. We can do the other option. 2 sets of blue lights stuttered alive at the yard's edge. Sirens chirped. Patrol cars rolled in, tires whispering over ballast. Catherine exhaled, relieved. Finally. Grace felt Daniel go still, then coiled. She called them, he said. False report. The cruisers halted, doors opening, officers fanned out, hands easy near holsters, eyes cataloging angles. One, older and tired, approached. We got a call about a restraining order violation. Who's Miss Catherine Harper? I am. My sister has been harassing me. I have an order. Daniel already had a folder out, crisp as a blade. Actually, officer, the only active order is in favor of Miss Grace Harper against Miss Catherine Harper and Associates. Here's the certified copy. Also, we pre-filed a notice of meeting with counsel present and a request for police standby due to concerns about manipulation. He tapped his watch. Time-stamped 20 minutes before your call came in.
The officer read, the set of his mouth changing to something like boredom with rich people. He looked at Catherine. Ma'am? Her lawyer spoke for her. Clerical confusion. Emotions are high. Mine aren't, the officer said. He handed Daniel's paper back and glanced at the cameras glinting in the dark. Looks like everyone's behaving. Keep it that way. Catherine's face didn't crack. It recalculated. She pivoted to strategy B, voice softening, eyes glistening on command. Grace, she said, almost tender, it's not too late to stop this. Think about what you're doing. Think about Dad. Her father was looking at Grace like a man asking a door not to close. You could take the royalty, he said. You could be safe. Safe is where cowards go to die slowly, Grace said. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. I wanted you in that courtroom when I won because I wanted you to see me, but I don't need you to. For the first time, her father's face broke, cracked by shame or pride or both. He didn't speak. He looked at the gravel. Daniel took a step, voice back to steel. Here's our counteroffer, he said to the lawyer. You preserve all devices, all drives, all communications. You agreed to an independent forensic audit. You advise your client to cease contacting our witnesses, and you prepare yourself to explain the capacity summary to a bar committee that loves nothing more than a clean scalp. The lawyer's nostrils flared. You don't dictate terms. We don't, Marla said. The evidence does. Catherine laughed once, bright and brittle. Evidence? She plucked a flash drive from her coat pocket and held it up, pinched between thumb and forefinger. You mean this? The only copy of the board packet where I'm lead scientist? The only version that proves your claims? She waggled it. Oops. Then she threw it. It arced, caught moonlight, and vanished into the dark throat of the yard. Mark made a strangled sound. Oh my God! Marla didn't move. She smiled a small, private smile. You threw our decoy. The real packet lives in 6 places you can't reach. Also, we just recorded you admitting you destroyed evidence you believed was real. She tilted her head. That's called a confession. For the first time, Catherine's poise faltered. Something mean flashed through, feral and frightened. Cynthia's voice cut the quiet, rough and shaking. I'm done being scared. She pulled the wire from her collar, tape-ripping hair. Do you hear me? I'm done. The older officer, who'd been pretending not to care, cleared his throat. All right, if everyone's done throwing flash drives, maybe we call it a night. And Miss Harper, he looked at Grace, the tired softening into human, keep your head down. Courts like neat stories. You've got the messier truth. Make it neat. As the cruisers drifted away, Mark sidled toward Grace. His whisper quivered. She said if the hearing goes south, she'll run. She has cash offshore. She asked me about countries without extradition. Marla's eyes sharpened. Names. 2, he said. I'll email them. You'll do it tonight.
Daniel said. And you'll tell us where the paralegal is, the one who filed the summary. Mark nodded, a man who'd switched survival gods. Catherine gathered her coat like she might strangle it. She turned to her father. Are you coming? He didn't move. He looked at Grace like a man at a fork he'd denied existed. His mouth opened, empty. Then he walked to Catherine anyway. Grace felt the tear happen inside, quiet and absolute, like fabric finally giving. Not grief exactly. Loss hardened into decision. She turned to Cynthia. You with me? Cynthia noted, eyes raw. All the way. They watched the SUV roll into the dark. Wind rattled the trestle. A freight horn wailed somewhere far off, the sound of mass and momentum and inevitability. Daniel tapped the tablet. A red light winked off. Tomorrow we file criminal referrals. Then we subpoena Benton and Smith's internal communications. We put the bar on a diet of their emails. Marla slung her bag over her shoulder. And we make sure Catherine understands there are no more shadows left to hide in. Grace looked down the rails. Steel threads pulled taut to the horizon. She pictured a courtroom and the polished floor and the sound her crutches would make when she walked in, alive, unerasable. Make it loud, she said. The letter from the state bar arrived like a scalpel, thin, white, decisive. Daniel slid it open with his thumb and read while Grace paced the edge of his office rug, crutches ticking the border like a metronome. It's preliminary inquiry accepted, he said, eye skimming. They want interviews, logs. The capacity summary will be reviewed for potential misconduct. Grace breathed out, slow. They're not just listening, they're sharpening knives. Good, Daniel said. Some stories need cutting open. Marla perched on the windowsill, boot heel tapping the heat register. If the bar pokes the firm, someone inside Benton and Smythe will crack. Not the partners, a rung or two down, the people who actually touch the files. Paralegals, Grace said. Marla's smile didn't reach her eyes. Paralegals live in paper like fish in water, and the water is dirty. Benton and Smythe glowed at street level. Brass, marble, a receptionist with the composure of a metronome. Upstairs, behind a glass door that hissed shut, partner Arthur Smythe lifted his head from a conference table and looked at Jenna Larson like she was a problem that had sprouted legs. Jenna stood with her hands clasped around a legal pad, knuckles bone white. She was 32, precise, a woman who could thread a filing deadline through a hurricane. Until now. The bar inquiry is routine, Smythe said. You did nothing wrong. I added a capacity summary to a hospital record at 2:17 a.m. from my home IP. The attending physician disagrees with it in writing. How is that nothing wrong? Across from her, Counselor Dwyer steepled his fingers. You relied on family representations. You told me what to write, Jenna said. The room went still. She swallowed. You said exaggerate, make it sound long-term. You said it would prevent an incompetent signature from tanking a deal. Smythe's smile was all porcelain. Jenna, I don't recall those words. You don't have to, Jenna said. Her voice shook, then steadied. It's an email. The two men didn't move. Outside, a siren Dopplered by, blue light flicking along the ceiling like fish scales. Dwyer leaned back. You're young, he said flatly. Ambitious. Don't decorate it with conscience. Conscience is what older lawyers buy after partnerships. We'll handle the bar. I'm not a lawyer, Jenna said. I don't have their armor. Smythe's eyes thinned. You have ours. No, Jenna said. I've been your hands. You can cut them off, but I know what those hands did. She left the conference room with the legal pad clutched to her chest like a shield. In the elevator, she stared at the brushed steel and saw herself reflected back. Small, exact, complicit. Her phone buzzed. A number she didn't recognize. A text. You don't know me. I'm on your side. MC. Jenna's heart knocked. She typed with her thumb, Who is this? Marla Crane. If you want out, bring the emails. We'll make sure they land where they count." Jenna stared at the doors until they parted. Noor turned the blinds into a barcode across the forensics lab. "I can image her phone in 15 minutes if she walks through the door. If she doesn't?" "She will," Marla said. She'd lived half her life reading tremors in voices. Jenna's had the tremor of a bridge deciding to stop being a bridge. Cynthia arrived with coffee and defiance. Her cheeks still bore the faint tape rash where the mic had been. "I got another call this morning. Same investigator. He tried a different angle. Said I'd lose my job. Said I'd never work in tech again if I testified." "What did you say?" Grace asked. Cynthia shrugged. "Told him I'd rather be unemployed than dishonest. Then I hung up and had a panic attack in my car." Grace squeezed her hand. Panic attacks still count as courage. The lab door swung open. Jenna stood there, hair yanked back, jaw tight. She held out a phone and a thumb drive wrapped in blue painter's tape. "I have 26 emails, and a Slack export, and a calendar invite from the night I drove to your parents' house for signatures." Grace froze. "You were there?" Jenna nodded. "I was. Your father signed. Your mother hovered in the kitchen and asked me how bad you were. When I said I didn't know, she said..." She swallowed. She said, "Make sure they don't give her anything she can sign." The room tilted. Grace felt the old staircase in her bones again. Noor slid into motion. Glove snap, device triage, the clean ballet of an evidence tech. "Password?" she asked. "Catherine Harper 2024. She used the same phrase to secure her board deck. The arrogance is consistent." Noor's eyebrows went up. "Bless lazy villains." Files populated the screen. Subject lines like little knives. Capacity narrative. Lead scientist optics. Param sedation language. Daniel skimmed, face hardening. He stopped on one email and read it aloud. From a.smythe@bensmythelaw.com to j.larson@bensmythelaw.com, c.harper@harpercorp.com. Subject: Capacity narrative, final. Body: We need a version that will withstand a cursory judicial glance. Use vegetative and guarded prognosis, no absolutes. The point is interim control, not permanent guardianship. Family confirms she is volatile. Keep it impersonal. If she miraculously sits up, we can walk it back as a clerical gloss. "Clerical gloss," Cynthia muttered. "They speak like gardeners pruning people." Noor clicked another file. Slack messages bloomed. A partner asking, "Did the boyfriend get the emails?" Jenna's reply, "She doesn't have a boyfriend." The partner, "Then who is Cynthia?" Jenna put her hand to her forehead. "I told them I didn't know. They didn't believe me." Daniel printed, collated, clipped. "This is the spine. The judge won't care about adjectives unless they're attached to facts. This is a fact. They framed you incapacitated for tactical advantage." Grace looked up at Jenna. "Why risk everything to come here?" Jenna stared at the screen until her answer formed. "Because I was in the room when the men said you were a narrative problem, and I realized I've been erasing myself for them for years. I won't erase a stranger to keep doing it." Grace's throat tightened. "You won't be a stranger for long." The smear arrived that afternoon like a trash bag hurled from a moving car. A think piece on a glossy IT blog about volatile female founders, featuring anonymized quotes that weren't anonymous at all. It called Grace erratic, difficult, brilliant but broken. It included a cropped photo from her college days at a protest, framed like rebellion was diagnosis. Marla had the author's Venmo in 20 minutes. "Paid by a burner tied to Benton and Smythe. I'll draft a notice. Also, a defamation suit they can frame in the break room." "Let them," Grace said. "I'll take a picture of it." Her phone buzzed with a voicemail. Her mother. "Gracie, we didn't know. We thought Catherine was... We thought a lot of things." The silence stretched, then snapped. "My father thinks we should talk to their lawyer alone." Grace deleted the message without responding. She didn't trust herself to speak and not shatter, and she needed her mouth for court. At midnight, Mark emailed 2 countries and a flight alert. Lisbon, 3:10 p.m., Denver to JFK, JFK to Lisbon, one way. Passenger name, Catherine Harper. Attached, a blurred photo of a passport, a slim money belt on a dresser. Subpoena the airline, Daniel said, and call the DA. If we can't block her leaving, we can make the landing unfriendly. Or we make the takeoff impossible, Marla said. I'll arrange a surprise at TSA. Nothing illegal, just sticky. You can't, Daniel began. I can, Marla said lightly. I'm not your client. I'm your storm. The calendar did what calendars do. It arrived. The clerk emailed a notice. Evidentiary hearing, Harper v. Harper et al., Denver County, 9 a.m., courtroom 3B. Daniel drew a battle map on the whiteboard. Witnesses, Dr. Price on the alteration and standards of medical documentation, Noor on metadata, Mark on payments and decks, Jenna on the capacity summary and signatures, Cynthia on the internal emails and retaliation, Grace on everything that ached and bled and counted. Your parents? He asked. Grace looked at the blank space next to parents and felt the question rise. What if they choose me? She pressed the cap onto a marker until it clicked shut. They will be subpoenaed. They will choose whatever hurts least. Noor slipped them a printout. One more thing, she said. A neighbor's doorbell camera captured a visitor the night of your fall. 10:41 p.m., camera picks up your front porch. A woman with a courier badge. She leaves with a man, your father, and an envelope. Grace leaned in. The frame froze on Jenna's face under a porch light, eyebrows drawn, mouth worried, the courier tote slung across her hip. That's me, Jenna whispered. I didn't know. I didn't know you were still inside. You didn't, Grace said softly. They did. Jenna's eyes filled. She nodded like someone taking a punch in the ribs and letting it land. Bring this, Daniel said. The judge won't blink at grief, but she will at timestamps. Catherine didn't make it on the Lisbon flight. Security marked her for random screening, then secondary, then please step into this room. By the time they were done, a DA's investigator was waiting with the request to surrender devices. Catherine walked away without the passport. TSA had misplaced it. The line of passengers clapped when she wasn't looking. She smiled at no one and called a car. Grace watched the airport footage on Marla's tablet. Not triumphant, but studied. She'll bring a bigger storm to court, she said. Good, Marla said. Storms clear air. That night, Denver hummed with the kind of cold that makes glass ring. Grace couldn't sleep. She stood at her apartment window and watched headlights ribbon along Spear Boulevard, people moving towards lives that didn't require courtrooms. Her phone lit up. A text from an unknown number. Where will you sit tomorrow? Blocked caller. Another. Wear flats. The floor is slippery. Catherine. Petty to the end. Grace typed back, I'll stand. She put the phone down and faced herself in the glass. You will walk in. You will tell it straight. And when it hurts, you will not apologize for bleeding. The reflection didn't blink.
Morning. The courthouse steps again, sun stinging, air knifing clean. Daniel's suit was darker today, tie exact. Noor carried a padded case like a medic. Marla had traded boots for flats she could run in. Cynthia's jaw was set in a new way, afraid and ready. In the corridor outside 3B, Grace saw her parents. Her mother looked smaller, hair sprayed into a helmet that begged the wind to be gentle. Her father's lips moved as if he were practicing the word sorry and kept failing. Grace walked past them. They turned to follow. She didn't stop. Inside, courtroom 3B gleamed, polished benches, a flag in a wash of morning light. Catherine sat at the defense table, chin up, as if cameras had found her in a good angle. Bentron and Smythe took their seats, smiles preloaded. A young reporter with a notebook wrote, Harper Sisters Face Off, and underlined it twice. The clerk called the case. The judge entered, efficient, eyes like fresh ice. Counsel, she said. Daniel rose. Plaintiff calls Dr. Simone Price. The door at the back opened. Dr. Price stepped in, white coat bright against the wood. She took the stand, hand raised, oath given, voice steady. She laid out medicine like squares on a chessboard.
Vital signs, responsiveness, prognosis. Then, plaintiffs calls Jenna Larson. Grace felt the room change. Jenna walked to the stand in a navy dress that tried to be armor and failed, because armor doesn't show the places you can be hurt. She looked smaller than in the doorbell still, but her voice didn't fracture. I appended the capacity summary at the direction of my supervising partner. I copied Ms. Catherine Harper on the draft. The language vegetative and guarded prognosis came from the partner. The phrase interim control came from Ms. Harper. Did you meet with the plaintiff's parents the night of the fall? Daniel asked. Yes, Jenna said. Mr. Harper signed a document. Mrs. Harper asked if we could keep Grace from signing anything for a while. Do you see either of those people in this room? Daniel asked. Jenna looked over the rail. Her eyes found Grace's father. Yes, she said softly. Him. Grace's father flinched like the word was a slap. From the second row, he rose half out of his seat, face gone the color of paper left in rain. His eyes landed on Jenna, widened, and his voice, usually kept for weather reports and sports scores, split the room. "Oh my God," he said to no one and everyone. "It's her!" The judge's gavel snapped the air. "Sit down," she said, voice like a door locking. Silence settled, alive and electric. Grace didn't turn. She kept her eyes on Jenna, who kept her eyes on the judge, who wrote something neat and final on a pad. It was happening. The story was leaving their kitchen and living room and hospital hallway and entering the record. Daniel glanced at Grace, a question under his breath. "Ready?" Grace nodded once. "Ready." The courtroom's hum thinned to a wire after her father's outburst. He sank back into the bench, hands white on the rail. Catherine didn't look at him. She stared at the judge as if she could will the world into a different angle. Daniel stepped closer to the witness stand. "Ms. Larson," he said, voice level, "did you keep any contemporaneous notes from that night?" Jenna nodded. "Time-stamped. I was trained to document." "Your Honor," Daniel said, "plaintiff moves to admit Exhibit 41, Ms. Larson's notes, including the 10:41 p.m. doorbell capture and the signature page." The judge glanced at Benton and Smythe. "Objection?" "Foundation," the partner said, too fast. "Overruled," the judge replied, faster. "Admitted." On the screen, the doorbell still appeared. Porch light ringed with moths, Jenna's courier bag, Grace's father's hand taking an envelope. The room watched itself commit to memory. Daniel turned. Plaintiff's calls Mark Fielding. Mark shuffled to the stand like gravity had doubled. He raised his hand, swore in, sat. Under oath, his voice became an engine that couldn't stall. Bank transfers, metadata edits, presentation optics, late-night phone calls with Catherine where she paced, plotting. "Were you paid to alter the authorship trail?" Daniel asked. "Yes," Mark said, eyes on his knees. "By Catherine Harper. She said the board needed a hero. She said Grace wouldn't be back." "Did Ms. Harper ever discuss plans to leave the country?" "Yes." A flinch. "Lisbon." The partner half rose. "Objection! Irrelevant." "Goes to intent," Daniel said. "Sustained in part," the judge said. "The jury—" She stopped herself, remembering. Bench trial. "The court will consider weight accordingly." Daniel let Mark go. The room breathed. Then plaintiffs calls Nur Siddiqui. Nur's testimony was surgical. Commit graphs, server clocks, backdated files, lazy villains. She pulled the language off the hard drives and hung it in the air where no one could pretend it had come from anywhere else. "Bottom line?" Daniel asked. "The code is Grace Harper's. The edits are not." "Thank you." Then it was Grace. She moved to the stand on crutches, the polished floor throwing back the rhythm she'd earned. Oath, chair. The wooden arm was cool under her fingers. "Ms. Harper," Daniel said softer now, "tell the court what happened on the staircase." "Not quickly," she said, and the room leaned in. "We argued." She said I was nothing without her. She shoved me. I fell. I woke up 2 weeks later. I waited. No one came. She swallowed. When my sister did, she told me to stay out of her way. And after, I found out my bank accounts were frozen. I met Daniel. I learned my medical records had been altered. I recorded Catherine at a cafe admitting the contract was hers now. I found out my parents had signed papers to keep me from signing anything. Her voice didn't tremble. If it did, the record wouldn't show it. Then I chose not to disappear. That's all, Daniel said, and stepped back.
Catherine's lawyer rose for cross like a man stretching before a jog. Miss Harper, he said, you're brilliant. No one disputes that. But brilliant people can be volatile. Isn't it true you were under stress? That you and your sister have a history of conflict? That you sometimes object to adjectives, Daniel cut in. Move to strike volatile. Sustained, the judge said. Counsel, question or move on? The lawyer pivoted. You blame your sister for a fall you can't fully remember. I remember the shove, Grace said. If you need physics, gravity filled in the rest. Isn't it possible? No, she said. He waited for the judge to scold her for the interruption. The judge did not. He tried another route. You say your parents abandoned you, but you have no proof they intended harm. They walked through my blood and left, she said. They intended a narrative. The lawyer forced a smile. No further questions. He sat. Catherine stood. Her suit was a sharper black today. She approached the stand, and for a blink, they were girls again across a shared bathroom sink, one hogging the mirror, one learning to vanish. Then the mirror became a microphone. Grace, Catherine said, gently for the record, you were always good at code. I was always good at rooms. We complemented each other. Isn't that true? We shared a last name. That's all. Catherine's lashes swept down. You're angry. I understand. You fell. It was an accident. I stepped in for the company, our company. I fought for our future. You fought for my nameplate. Catherine's voice thinned. I wouldn't have had to if you'd been stable. Silence opened like a trapdoor. The partner flinched. Thank you, Daniel said dryly. No questions for this witness. He turned to the judge. Plaintiff calls Dr. Simone Price for limited rebuttal. Dr. Price returned crisp. Daniel held up a printed email. Doctor, did you write this capacity summary? No, she said. What is your opinion of it? It's misleading and dangerous. It weaponizes uncertainty to justify control. Daniel put the paper down. No more questions. The judge looked over her glasses at Benton and Smythe. Defense? The partner conferred with Catherine, who was suddenly studying the grain in the table with unusual interest. The partner stood, cleared his throat. Defense calls no witnesses. Not even Miss Harper? The judge asked, one brow tilting, given her centrality. The partner hesitated. On advice of counsel, Miss Harper declines. Noted. Daniel didn't smile. He tucked his notes into a folder he didn't need and stood for closing. Your Honor, this case is not about sibling rivalry. It's about a campaign, coordinated, documented, to erase a person and replace her with paperwork. We showed you the bank transfer to a subordinate, the metadata edits inserted at 2:17 a.m. by a firm that now calls it a clerical gloss. We showed you the doorbell camera, the signatures, the recordings. We showed you a break line scored to fail. He let the last phrase sit. The room held its breath. We submit that truth lives exactly where it always has, where the timestamps don't change when you want them to. Return her name to her work, dissolve what was stolen, protect the witnesses who stood up, and send a clear message to every room that thinks it can make a woman disappear if the paperwork is crisp enough.
He sat. Benton and Smythe's partner approached the lectern with a smile that had nowhere left to be. Your Honor, the defense regrets any missteps. Families are messy. Corporations are complex. But there's no theft here. There's stewardship. There's a sister stepping in. By scoring a break line? The judge asked without looking up. A disputed allegation. The judge nodded once. I have what I need.